Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. For this, we will be covering the Marlins series up against the Cincinnati Reds. It will be a 4-game set. As you can see, we have a very small trio. We have the big three here. Yours truly, I'll be Dwayne Wade.
Are we a small trio or are we big? You just said both in like the span of.
Oh, I did? Oh, well, it's small as it's three, but each of us are big. We're each superstars in this case. But we're here to talk about the series versus the Marlins and the Cincinnati Reds. But before that, I want to go ahead and talk about what was just a crazy series between the Marlins and the Pirates. The Marlins did take 2 out of 3, but after some of those games, it felt like Miami just lost it. It felt like momentum was down despite winning the series. Kevin, what did you see overall from this series against the Pirates?
Well, I didn't watch too much. As you guys know, I was on a very, very long trip, but I got to watch little tidbits. I know Braxton was good, I heard. I mean, he got a couple Ks in there. And then that second game is just like, yikes. You really can't get a run in there. And then the final one, Sandy wasn't, sharp, but he was good enough to keep the game in play. And Anthony Bass can't pitch in the 9th. Unfortunately, he's a good amazing seventh inning pitcher. Just can't do it in the 9th. And that's not all totally his fault. As we know, Jesus Aguilar messed up a double play. We'll probably talk about him later. And they were able to salvage that final game in the trade that in the extra innings. So it was luckily they won it, a much needed series to win. But I think you mentioned that the momentum wasn't at its highest in those last 2 games. The first one, they broke the streak. The guys were fired up. And then the second one, I didn't mention a lot of injuries went down. Max went down in that second game. So a lot's to unpack in this series, but there'll be even more to unpack against the Reds.
Eli, I wanted to ask you about that first game. I want to go game by game a little bit and talk about Braxton Garrett. Another really great game from him. 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. Is Brax now solidified as a rotation piece almost in the long term? Is Brax the guy in our rotation now? Maybe not the guy, but maintain the spot.
No, not yet. Close. Oh. What I've noticed, you look through his game logs, and he has been outstanding against the Pirates back-to-back times. He was outstanding against the Nationals. Remember that game? That was the July 4th game where he pitched. He pitched really deep into that one. And you look at his other outings, and it's more of a mixed bag. So I need to see a larger sample and see exactly how he dispatches of really high-quality hitters, because he has faced very few high-quality hitters in these recent games. I think the Nationals game was without Juan Soto in their starting lineup for that one, if I remember correctly. And obviously the Pirates speak for themselves. No Brian Reynolds in either of these starts. They traded Dan Vogelbach at the last minute to get him out of the way, among others. He's taking care of business against really depleted lineups. And so that, at the very least, it shows you something of a floor that he has. His slider continues to be just a revelation. This pitch that kind of came to him midway through his professional career. And as he talked about on the broadcast right after his start, honestly, this year is when it has really taken off as a pitch, thanks to some adjustments that he's made with it. So it continues to be an evolution process. I like him very much as a player and as somebody that adapts, because that's great evidence of how he just is a better pitcher now than he certainly was last year. A step in the right direction, just still has more to prove. Once he faces legitimate lineups, he'll get opportunities to do so the rest of this year. He's certainly earned the opportunity to stick in the rotation until until the results don't back it up. As long as he continues to perform, then he sticks around. Whether he will keep performing at an above average starter level, I think it's still too soon to say. Needs to face harder competition.
Yeah, and another thing that happened that game, the Marlins broke 2 streaks, innings without a run, and then they also had a home run that game. Kevin, how great was it to see not only a run but also a home run in that game?
It's even better to not see that Yankees hat Eli was wearing last stream. I saw what it would take for Eli to take that hat off, and it was a very, very quick, brief stint with the hat. So I'm glad it's off. But Avi Garcia got a home run, very impressive there on that end. I was not expecting him to get a home run out of everyone, but hey, they did it. It feels good. The offense finally got it going somehow, but they couldn't get it going in that second game, which really sucks to see because this Miami offense at what we were expecting was not what we saw in the past couple of games. We were expecting a high power offense to hit homers and get it going, but that's what they haven't done at all. So to see them score 8 runs in that first game felt kind of good. And we didn't even mention JJ Bleday played in this series. I think that's the gif I'm seeing down there. So yeah, it's Trevor and JJ. So yeah, it was nice to see JJ get it going. He had a nice series too in that third game. He had a very impressive first at bat.
Yeah,
Alex Carver, if Alex Carver were here, he would definitely say that.
That was his walk of the year, his at-bat of the year.
That was the at-bat of the year, dude. That was impressive. Got all the way to the 3-2 count and got the walk. Very patient. That's why he has such a high walk rate. But he does have a very high strikeout rate, but we won't get into that one.
It's not really that problematic. It's worse than average, but what I look at is how those numbers interact with each other, how much you strike out and how much you walk. And with him, even when he was performing badly a lot of last year at AA, he's somebody that just has a great eye for pitches and for recognizing them and laying off ones that a lot of hitters just aren't capable of doing. So that's what stood out immediately is the quality of takes that he makes on pitches because he's able to see them out of the hands and he's not going to panic when something looks like it might be in the zone. He is a guy that, as down as some people have been at times, I maintain that he's a really high floor player that at the very least, I think is going to get on base at the major league level at a pretty high clip. He recognizes pitches. He's, especially recently, he's gotten stronger in such a way that he's making a lot of quality contact when he does make contact, in fact. And we got to see that. To me, that's probably the biggest moment. That was the nicest thing that I saw while he's been up is his hit on Sunday to get them to set up an insurance run in what was the 9th inning. They may have lost on Sunday if he doesn't get that double in the top of the 9th, end up scoring. And that gave Anthony Bass and the Marlins defense enough of a cushion so that the game at least went into extras, even when they faltered in the bottom of the 9th inning. He showed a little bit of everything. The fact that he was able to make quality contact and draw a walk and play center field as he's playing again tonight. It's exciting. It's exciting. This is a good young player, somebody that I think some people have mentioned that if Jorge Soler comes back, well, that will be it for Bleday. I would be shocked. I'd be very surprised if Bleday gets sent down at any point this year. As long as he performs, he doesn't have to perform at a star level. As long as he performs at a decent level, they are going to have room for him. And it could come at the expense of somebody getting traded. It could come at the expense of Jesus Sanchez or Brian De La Cruz getting sent down. They're in no hurry to send this guy back down. He can help the team in a lot of different ways. And he's already showing that in this small sample.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, Eli. Does this end the Jesus Sanchez in center field experiment? Or with Bleday now playing center field almost? We expect him to be playing almost every day. Is that it for Jesus in center field?
So that's going to be fascinating to see. So when we talk about tonight's game, as we will in a little bit, they are sitting Sanchez because it's a lefty on the mound, and it's not about his defense. It's because they don't think he can hit against the left-handed pitcher. So I think it's clear that Bleday is the backup center fielder or the part-time center fielder for sure. It's not an accident that he was playing center field as much as he was in the minors this season, and particularly as it got closer and closer to the time of him getting called up. I would guess that moving forward, Bleday is going to be the main center fielder. As we could talk about a little bit later, there's just not a whole lot of easy center field trades to be made at this particular time with the way that the market is. So even though I think they're going to continue to be on the lookout for somebody that is more established and that is more comfortable defensively than even Blade is, they might not make that trade at the deadline. They might wait on that until the offseason or a little bit later on as well. That's going to be nice to see, though. Blade in center field. He's not great out there, but he's different than Jesus because he doesn't make some of these really inexplicable screw ups, right? Like he's limited athleticism wise. He's not as fast as Sanchez. He's not going to get to quite as many balls as Jesus Sanchez does. The balls that he does get to, he's usually going to make the right decision.
He also has some nice base running, and that one after when he scored in the run, that was pretty nice too. I'll also want to mention that.
I think his sprint speed on that infield hit was 29 feet per second, which is a great number. I don't think that's his usual number. It is it was impressive that he at least has that in the tank when he can really smell a hit to be able to get down the line at a rate that is pretty close to what you'd expect from a fast player. So it's overall, it was just an awesome first impression. And hopefully we're going to see 4 straight games of him in Cincinnati right now to get an even larger sample of what he can do.
Yep.
And going back to that second game, you mentioned one young player. I wanted to go back and talk about another one. Was starting Max Meyer, who went down with injury, only pitched 2/3 of an inning, 1 strikeout as Noah comes in. This is probably perfect for Noah, as it was almost a bullpen game, reliever after reliever. Eli, what did you see first off from Max Meyer right before his injury?
Well, you can see that he hurt himself almost immediately when the game began, and that it does show a troubling pattern that we've seen from the Marlins athletic staff this year of letting guys continue to play through discomfort, because each of his few pitches before actually leaving the game, taking extra time to gather himself after those pitches, he knew it. He recognized, and he was showing it in his body language, that he was not comfortable on the mound for that entire, it was a walk to Brian Hayes. You could see it play out through that entire plate appearance that something was off. You just worry that by leaving him on for a couple extra pitches, that may have contributed to him. Fingers crossed it didn't get worse, right? You don't want him to actually make it worse by trying to pitch through it, even for a couple, even if it's such a small sample. This is something we've seen before. We've seen it most obviously with Jazz on a couple occasions where they've kept him as a base runner when he
had his knee against Ozzie Albies, and I was at the game where he was so late and he ran across first. And
so that one sticks out, but the most recent injury, when you could see it at the plate with his back issue, that he was trying to stretch it out, and that should have been the obvious sign to bring him out, and they didn't do that. We've seen it with head collisions during this season as well with some other players where they get hit in the head and the player is trying to shake it off and they really can't shake it off, and yet they stay in the game, if not for the whole game, then at least for like the rest of that inning. That's been disappointing, the way that this athletic training staff has handled those things. And Max was the obvious example. In that same game, Brian Anderson, Tommy Nance, you didn't necessarily see those as obviously when they happened, but both those guys, as soon as the game ends, they wind up on the IL. So that stinks.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those crazy games that I think Marlins fans will remember for some time. Noah, you talked to relievers. Just what did you think about that game after Max Meyer was gone and they had to go to their bullpen and multiple guys getting multiple innings?
I was very happy that most of the calamity of Max being pulled from the game and all that happened while it was still the Sabbath, so I couldn't see it live. That was scary. I'm very proud of what the bullpen did, and they held down the fort. Of course, you can't expect them to be perfect, and they weren't perfect. Tanner Scott gave up the run, but you got to score runs. You can't. You're not going to win a baseball game if you don't score any runs. So it doesn't really matter what happens on the defensive side if your offense doesn't show up at all. So anyone who has a problem with Tanner Scott giving up a single run, ask the offense what they did on that game. Besides for that, I hate seeing Garrett Cooper get injured. And especially because every single time he gets hurt, it's some freak accident or like a hit by pitch like that. It's so not fair to a guy like him. and he was in a lot of pain. I think at this point, right now, him still being on the active roster is a formality, because there's no way he's getting in a game this week. With Max Meyer, that's just, of course, terrible. It's even worse when you see a player call out the training staff himself. That's always like the biggest pit in your stomach. With Brian Anderson, buddy, come on, we need you healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Nance, I have no idea what happened to him. Yeah. I think he threw more than one inning. So if he throws more than one inning, he automatically goes on the IL. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but roster size and everything. Yeah.
I wanted to ask all three of you, now with the injury thread. This is a very long injury thread. I want each of you to pick out maybe one, something from this thread that really stands out to you. Kevin, looking at this thread that Grant put out, what stands out to you on that list?
It is long. I'm reading now. I guess Sixto. He threw. I know yours is Peyton. Sixto. He threw a bullpen. So that's nice. We'll hopefully see him soon. Pitch against live hitters. I think that's something that Eli mentioned on Twitter. So Sixto, little by little, but the other two are Luzardo and Edward. But I know someone also mentioned that they're very close. It looks like to come back. Luzardo's actually. I expect him to be back for Cincy at home. I would like to see him back there.
Yeah. Noah?
Yeah, as Kevin pointed out, I just have to give a shout out to Peyton Henry. Love you. Waiting for you to come back. You're probably not going to get to the big leagues because Nick Fortes has just stolen everybody's jobs. But hey, listen, if the organization really wants to, I'd take Peyton Henry over Jacob Stallings right now. I think a lot of the stuff on here is just, again, a lot of repeats of different things and a lot of just kicking the can down the road. We're still not there yet with guys like Sixto, and who knows what happened to Sulcer, Yacobonis, Soler we're never going to see again. Nance, I don't know what's going on with him. Poteet, that's a terrible thing to hear, especially for a pitcher. So it's concerning, and it's also progress, but I don't even know what to think about it because it's just so all over the place.
Right. With Poteet, he had such a nice fit on this roster coming out at the start of this season as the long man, as a real high quality long man that you would trust to give you multiple innings, that you could just be a spot starter when that particular situation arrived. And the setback is frustrating. When anybody talks about numbness with a pitcher, the first thing that comes to mind is potentially thoracic outlet syndrome. There's just not many other injuries that have that type of symptom to it that comes just from pitching. He was injured. He was on the IL earlier this year, and he had just recently gotten back from that. Mm-hmm. That's been another thing we've seen this season with him, with Joey Wendell, with Jorge Soler, guys that aggravate an injury or have something related to their original injury, even after going on the IL and presumably checking all the boxes they needed to check on the rehab. So that's unfortunate for him as well. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't?
You could say the same thing about Brian Anderson. That's the same shoulder.
Right.
That's really concerning.
Yep. So with Bender is getting pretty close to coming back potentially. We'll see exactly where he fits on this roster, considering that he wasn't pitching all that well earlier in the year anyway. But this will be his fourth rehab appearance with Double-A. He's already pitched 3 times in the Complex League and with Jupiter. So he's getting pretty close. That's the guy that's him and Luzardo are most imminent. And Edward Cabrera is either potentially one extra rehab start behind Luzardo, but we'll see him shortly after the trade deadline coming back up. In terms of Sixto, I'm interested in seeing him face live hitters, but he is not going to pitch in the majors this year. No. I just want to reiterate that for people to know. The best case scenario is him looking dominant in AAA and finishing out the year there and looking like a guy that maybe could actually still contribute in some way moving forward. But it's not about this year with him in terms of guys that could help out. Once Cooper, as Noah alluded to, if Cooper is going to go on the IL, we better be seeing a lot of Lewin Diaz on this team. It's been the way that they've treated Lewin Diaz continues to be one of the more confusing things that this organization
it's borderline malpractice,
both this year and last year. he makes so many trips to the major league team without actually playing on the major league team. And I believe he's with the team right now, just waiting for potentially a roster spot to open up. If it does, that'd be bad for Cooper, but I'd feel the silver lining would be Lewin getting some sort of steady playing time.
And also, if Cooper does go on the IL, this kind of means Aggie won't really be going anywhere in the trade deadline, or they won't be cutting ties with him.
It has no value.
Exactly. That's why I said they won't be cutting ties with him, because they could just DFA the guy, but I don't think they will, especially with Cooper out. So that's something to mention there. Because I know some want to either trade Aggie or DFA him. So
I want to mention two other guys that came up with JJ Bleday. We just talked about JJ Bleday. One is former, or I should say, played before with the Marlins, now back again, Jeff Brigham, and also, let me see how you pronounce, Oscar Brazoban. Pitcher there, 32-year-old pitcher. I want to talk about Hosgard, who had a really great showing for the Marlins. 1 inning, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, but I believe he showed some great stuff there. Eli, what did you see from Hosgard, and do you see any potential from him moving on, or is that just Anabis Zabala?
It was a little different than Zabala, because Zabala was struggling in the minors when they called him up. That was yet another really weird move, that he was even on the Texas squad, because he wasn't performing in the minors. And Brazoban has less fastball velo than Zabala does, but he's a better pitcher. He has 3 really interesting pitches with his mid-90s fastball, with his slider, and with his changeup. We saw a lot of changeups in that first appearance that he made. He was pitching really well at AAA, especially the last 3-4 weeks. He wasn't pitching in high leverage situations. They were doing weird things. He was a low priority for them. Make no mistake, there are guys at AAA that I believe in more, headlined by Andrew Nardi, as somebody that I think you trust his control a lot more than you do somebody like Brazoban. That's going to continue to be a question with him, is whether he could throw enough strikes and strikes in the right spots. But he was red hot prior to his call up, and it's good to see him get rewarded for that. So it's going to be something like a Jimmy Yacobonis situation, where I think he could catch some people by surprise his first few outings, and then maybe that surprise wears off and teams tee off against him. I'm not hyper confident in him moving forward. I don't think he should block more trustworthy pitchers from rejoining the active roster. I don't think they're going to hold down Edward Cabrera in a few weeks just because Brazoban is on the pitching staff. I think you need to get your most talented arms, the one actually onto the pitching staff some way, somehow. But in the meantime, this is a really great story. 32 years old. He turns 33 later this year. It's very rare for guys to debut at that age, and it just shows how much time he had to put in the minors, pitching internationally. I saw him pitching in the DR this past winter, and it was mostly impressive from him. So there's a long road to get here. Congrats to him on at least having that one moment.
Moving to Kevin, Jeff Brigham back again with the Marlins, got the save, had 2 strikeouts. Or Kevin, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, talk to me about Jeff Brigham.
It was impressive. I know the guy pitched a little bit 2018, pitched 2019. I know he's had some injury issues, so it was nice to see him go out there and kind of get the 9th, not the 9th. I think it was the bottom of the 10th down with no issues. So he got a save, something other pitchers haven't been able to do on this team. So it's nice to see a guy come back and get the save.
Watch yourself.
I'm not talking about Anthony Bass, no worry. Although he still has
watch yourself.
But talk to me about Jeff Brigham. Eli, seeing Jeff Brigham there, we just finished about Brazoban. Just where does Jeff Brigham fall? And it's just like you mentioned, maybe a guy that's here for a little bit.
Yeah, just here for a little bit. I was very high on him a few years ago, entering 2020, because once they converted him to a reliever in 2019, his stuff really ticked up. His fastball velo was off the charts, and his slider had all the measurables of being a wipeout breaking ball. The stuff hasn't entirely come back to what it was before his injuries. He spent 2 years in the wilderness trying to get healthy, which just makes it another very feel-good story that he's up here. But the stuff, as I said, it just did not quite get back to what it used to be. And so I think this could be a pretty short run for him. He does have minor league options remaining. So he could still hang around the organization for a while, go up and down and up and down. That's there's no hurry to get rid of him in any particular way. And you could see how much this moment meant to him to actually be on the mound to close out that game. But he is 30 years old at this point, so you won't really expect the stuff to get any better than it is right now. Somebody that is, in the meantime, it's nice to have him here. If fingers crossed, these arms get healthy and they don't lose anybody else due to injury, he's going to have a hard time sticking on the active roster.
And something interesting that I think we forgot to mention, I think Eli also said this yesterday on the spaces that should be up, most of it on the official show, is that there's a lot of Rule 5 guys. So if they want to call up guys, so Eli mentioned keeping Huskar Brazoban on the roster, that shouldn't be holding it for a hold for Edward Cabrera to come up. Other guys like the guys you've heard many times, Alex Carver mentioned, Simpson, Nardi, all those guys that should be getting a shot. Those guys at some point do need to be put on the 40-man to not be Rule 5 eligible, since that will be taking place this upcoming offseason. So Blade is no longer eligible for that one. And, just another name, Peyton Burdick, still eligible for it. And many, many players are still eligible that are pretty good prospects.
Yep.
Yeah. I think does anyone have anything to mention before we head to break? Really quick, they want to discuss. So with that, we'll go into a break. This break is going to be Grant's first interview as a Major League reporter talking to top prospect JJ Bleday. But after this break, we'll talk about draft signings, lineups, and predictions. So stay tuned.
Yeah, hold on. I didn't set this up the right way, so I'm going to have to screen share it instead of actually playing the auto click. But I think this is going to work just fine with us here, and we'll duck behind the screen for JJ Bleday right here, and you should be able to hear him just fine.
JJ, how did your first weekend go in the MLB in your mind?
I thought it went pretty well. It was a good experience. It was fun. Getting a lot of firsts out of the way and sharing that time with family.
Yeah. So with your family, your mom had said on yesterday's broadcast that you grew up in Pennsylvania. PNC Park was near and dear to you. How are the emotions with that leading into that series, making your debut there?
It was a whirlwind for sure. When I was on the plane and coming in to the airport, I could see PNC Park and Heinz Field. So I got goosebumps there. And then, once I went out and started stretching, I definitely choked up a little bit and kind of, was taking everything in.
Yeah. So you've mentioned first, there's still a home run left in an historic city for baseball like Cincinnati. What would that mean to you?
It'd be great, but right now, just kind of focusing on what I've been doing and just just keep standing your same approach and let things happen.
All right. Then with Friday, that's going to be your Lone Depot Park debut. Sandy's on the mound. How do you think that's going to go? Hopefully a good crowd.
Yeah, hopefully there's a good crowd, but I'm just excited. I'm excited to be here, and I think it's going to be another opportunity, and to be having that in Miami is going to be a fun experience.
There we go.
That was a great interview from Grant there in the clubhouse. What do you guys think about that interview, and maybe anything takeaways from what JJ had to say?
He's a cool guy.
All right.
Someone forgot that you're supposed to record interviews into their lockers.
We'll give Grant there his first time. It was a really great interview. JJ's awesome. I wanted to go in and talk about draft signings. Signings the Marlins have made. It's draft signing season. The deadline is 1 week away. The Marlins have signed some of their top draftees, including Jacob Berry for around, I believe, $6 million. Jacob Miller, who I believe signed for underslot deal, and other signings where Eli will get all the signings there and what they got. Kevin, anything you saw from signings that maybe stood out to you? What players got, and maybe some players that are missing?
Kyle Krieger, such a low value that they got him for, $37K compared to his slot value, which was $202,000. So that was by far the biggest, thing that was like, wow, that Miami got. That's why DJ should be very proud of himself being able to sign 13 of the 20 guys, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah,
and Cade Gibson, his fellow Louisiana Tech, signed for $12,500, and I believe his slot value was a little low, around 150, something like that, but still, it was really crazy there. And another guy who haven't even signed, Kevin, your guy, Marcus Johnson, He has not signed yet. He hasn't signed yet. What do you see from him?
He's a cool. He I don't know. It's just he seems cool. He had both relief and starting experience. I asked DJ about this during the press conference, the Zoom press conference, the day 3 one, and he sees him as a starter. So he sees a lot of these guys as a starter actually. So that's very impressive to see how they'll go about these guys. I know some of them were relievers in college, if I'm correct. I know one of them was a closer, so we'll see how he goes about that one. But Marcus Johnson, I know the starter numbers didn't look too good, but they expect him to continue developing at that spot. So we'll see. I like the pick. I don't know why. He seemed like a cool guy at first, and it's kind of that Anthony Bass love that Noah has for him. So we'll see.
Right. For the time being, there are 13 signings confirmed with the actual signing bonus amounts. I think it's the number who have actually signed is closer to 16 or 17, maybe 18 at this moment. I think Marcus Johnson being somebody, he's not officially signed. Well, we don't know for sure, like exactly what he got, but I think that he's already in an agreement with the team as well. The ones that we do know for sure in these 13, it's Jacob Berry, 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, 5th round pick, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 18th, and 19th round picks. Those are the ones for sure that are locked in. The two guys, as we're joined here for a press box report, right in the middle of our draft conversation.
We'll get back to the draft report. Maybe we could get some of the numbers there. Grant, tell me about it. Your very first press box report in Cincinnati, your first game covering as a reporter. How is it? Give us the entire spiel.
So first press box report, it's gone pretty well. I'd say I got 4 interviews in. Definitely a very, very unique experience. Met some great people so far. We're about 40 minutes out from first pitch. Gates have just opened. I tweeted it out. Surprisingly, a decent amount of Marlins fans here. I was really surprised. I think it might be the Jazz or Sandy effect. We'll see, but so far, so good. I've enjoyed every part of it so far.
Yeah, anything you see so far between either Miami or Cincinnati that really stood out to you?
Batting practice went well for the Marlins so far. Joey Wendell got one second deck. Sanchez hit one to the fence all the way out and right. So, hopefully they start barreling some balls. And Nick Fortes, I overheard him tell JJ Bleday that the ball flies in Cincinnati. So at least they've acknowledged that.
Yeah, I wanted to get really quick your prediction while here in the press box. What's your prediction? It's a 4-game set. Who do you have winning the series and your MVP?
I was going to go with the inverse just because I predicted Pirates take 2 out of 3 last series, and I want to do it again. But look, the weather in Cincinnati doesn't look that good this week. There's going to be some doubleheaders probably and delays and stuff. So I think pitchers are going to get pulled a little bit early because the Reds, I think they have the pitching advantage this series, honestly. They have a really nice rotation. So I think the Marlins are going to go grind it out in the 8th, 9th, 10th innings like they usually do, and I'm going to take a Marlins sweep. Very, very bold, but I think it needs to happen. And my series MVP is going to be Avisail Garcia.
Wow.
You're a madman.
I know I am. I'm feeling good. So I'm going to go with Avisail Garcia. His numbers in Cincinnati are incredible for his career. So I'm going 2 very, very bold predictions for the series.
Awesome. Any last thing you want to mention, Grant? How is it covering your first game? What was it like walking through the gate for the first time as a reporter?
Very, very surreal. Going in that clubhouse, seeing all those guys up close. Everyone is super, super big. I don't think I realize how big a lot of these guys are. All these guys are super nice and friendly. They love the Miami media, and you gotta love everyone on this team. I feel like that's personal.
Awesome. That's the press box report with Grant. He'll be there for all 4 games. Grant, awesome prediction, and hope everything goes well for that game for you.
Thank you. Yeah, go follow me on Kiefer Media for more updates throughout the series.
Yeah, and Grant, all 4 games, weather permitting, he's going to be there for.
Yeah, if they have to play one next week, I may not be here though. I go out of town Saturday, so hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be there all 4 games.
I'll fly in for you.
Yeah, I've got you with lodging, Noah.
Oh, cool.
Guys.
Well, later, Grant. Well, that was a press box report there. Going back to the draft.
I thought I was bold.
Yeah,
I know. Wow.
That's definitely a choice. And going back to these signings, I wanted to mention one guy. I believe 17th rounder. You said he wasn't signed yet. I believe his name is Evan Chester, somewhere like that. He's
Evan
a high school
Crest.
pitcher.
Evan Crest. Yes,
Yes.
the two guys, really the only suspense with this draft class are these two high school arms. In the 17th round, Evan Crest out of Warden High School, Tampa Warden High School. So he's in state. And their third round pick, Carson Milbrandt, who is committed to go to Vanderbilt as well. Milbrandt is going to require something over slot to get it done. And Crest is in the later rounds where there's no slot value for those picks, but the Marlins have to use whatever is left in their bonus pool in order to try to get him out of his commitment to Jacksonville. And that's the suspense. I mean, according to my math, for the 13 signings that are confirmed, that took out $8.34 million from their pool. And when you include that in the overage that they can spend, it's a total of $2.7 million to play with over these final 7 picks. And most of that is going to go towards Milbrandt and Crest. If they can make that money work, we'll have to find out. As has been mentioned before, because the team traded one of their higher draft picks, that took money out of their bonus pool. That's what made this a little bit more complicated, is they don't have as much of a pool to play around with as they would normally have coming off such a bad year as they did in 2021. The deadline to sign these guys is only a week away. It's on August 1st. It's next Monday. They get that out of the way right before the trade deadline. And I imagine that these final decisions with Milbrandt and Crest, they might not be official until the actual deadline day, August 1st.
Do we know how much Milbrandt's slot value is? Is it?
Yes, his slot value was, I'm going to have to scroll just a second. It was about 747,000. But he's expected to need more than that.
Probably, would you say $1 million would be the right number for him? A little bit, or 9?
Yeah, maybe even more than $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that he is the biggest fish still out there, and Crest shortly behind him. But so we'll see. So I talked about this. I was on Locked On Marlins with Peter Pratt shortly after the draft came down, and I told him that it's a big difference in evaluating this draft in terms of whether they get everybody to sign versus whether they miss out on one or both of these young pitchers. If they get all of them to sign, if they do go 20 for 20, this is a good draft. This is despite I had my issues with Jacob Berry. We talked about this on multiple streams, that the reasons why I didn't feel that was an exciting enough pick. Not enough upside when you're drafting number 6 overall, but they can make up for it if they somehow make the money work with all these other guys.
Yeah.
And something to mention is that with the underslot on Krieger, they should have just a little bit more money to make something happen there.
But it's not just Krieger. They went underslot on
Cade Gibson.
A lot of these players. Yeah.
Cade
Gibson on Dale Stanovich.
Yeah.
On Evan Taylor, they went a little bit underslot as well. And I think that the Marcus Johnson signing, was that his name, or did I get his first name wrong? Yeah, no, I think I imagine that's going to be slightly underslot as well. Marcus. That's why it's going to be a tight squeeze in order to get these guys what they consider fair compensation versus being able to still afford those big fish that are still out there.
What's the percentage that they go for 20 for 20?
I trust DJ Svihlik. I'd give it better than a coin flip chance. They pleasantly surprised you on all these issues going back to 2019. So I think it's probable that they figure it out.
I give it 90%.
Yeah, that's a good percentage.
Yeah,
I give it a good 90%.
DJ we trust.
And what didn't mean, seeing that the Marlins signed their first round pick so early in that window, because I believe Khalil Watson went down, and also Jacob Lede went down to the wire. So what did it see for you guys to actually see the Marlins get it done really quick with Jacob Berry?
I like seeing that they're so sure about their decision that they're willing to get out there and do the signings as quick as possible. Show some sense of urgency, which is what we haven't seen from the organization lately. So it's nice to see that they got him to the ballpark. They got him in BP. He was showing off his fielding, if you can call it that. And he was showing off his lefty swing. It was great to have him in the ballpark. It's great to see that they're getting them into the building and signed quickly.
Yeah,
and Kevin, the performance on the field was interesting.
Kevin, what do you think of them signing Barry so early compared to their last few first round draftees?
They got him for underslot, right? Or right under the underslot, Eli? I'm pretty sure.
By a small margin, he was underslot.
So I guess it was easier for them to get that done, unlike a guy like Watson who wanted a good amount, and Blade, I believe, also. So I'm happy that they got this done quickly, and as Noah mentioned, it's good to get him in there, get him acquainted to the team and Don Mattingly and everyone there. And he does look like Drew Brees.
Yes, we've said that 1,000 times.
Yeah, everybody has said it. I mean, the people imagine being in Louisiana, which is where he was playing last year, and all the people that I'm sure gave him that exact same thing. I think the concern is that he looks like he might actually be Drew Brees in terms of his age as well. Like he's not a youthful 21-year-old.
True.
He looks a little older than 21, yeah. But
Kev, he's literally like 3 years younger than you, 3 years older than you. He's there.
He's there, and look where I am.
I wanted to move on now and talk about lineups now, talk about this series really quickly before we get into predictions. We have a really big series here for Miami right before the trade deadline coming against the Reds, 4-game series, 4 interesting pitching matchups. I think the best one in my eyes is probably on Wednesday, or the most interesting one. Kev, what do you see from these lineups between the Marlins and Cincinnati? What stands out to you?
Well, let's look at the Marlins one first. You have Miggy at leadoff, and then you have Nick Fortes who's DHing, which is interesting. So this is, I think, the 3rd time he's DH this season. They have Williams Astudillo at second base. There should be another certain someone in there, but we've mentioned his name plenty already, aka Charles LeBlanc. Blade, they have him at center field. No Jesus Sanchez. So interesting lineup. This looks like the Sunday type of lineup you would see, but sure. And I would have liked to see Nick Fortes catching Trevor Rogers, but it's okay. We'll take Jacob Stallings. He's been good with Trevor, I guess. And then you look at the Cincinnati Reds. You have a couple of trade deadline guys that may get moved. Definitely Brandon Drury, who's having a nice season as one. I guess Joey Votto, if any team is interested. I doubt he gets moved. Former
Marlin, Donovan Solano. Can't forget.
313.
Marlins legend Donovan Solano.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and then there's a couple other guys who I've never heard of. No offense to them, but this is a rebuilding Reds team. They just got. My audio quality is that nice. Thank you.
You're not supposed to get distracted. Keep going.
It's the Reds. They're rebuilding. There's not much to say about them, to be honest with you. Jonathan India, Rookie of the Year, so he's facing Trevor Rogers, who was the runner-up. That should be interesting to watch. So let's see how that goes. But
imagine if Trev beans him.
I wanted to ask you guys, what are the pitching matchups are you looking forward to? Obviously, today is Trevor Rogers, Nick Lodolo. We have Pablo Lopez, Hunter Green, Braxton Garrett, Luis Castillo, and then it might be Daniel Castano against Ashcraft, I believe.
Because Thursday is Max Meyer's spot.
Yeah.
And what's complicated is that Castano, it still hasn't been the requisite 15 days since he got sent down. So he's not eligible to come back unless he is brought up as a corresponding roster move for an injury. That could be a reason why they've waited a little bit on this Garrett Cooper thing. If they wait long enough and make Castano the corresponding move for Cooper, then he would be eligible to pitch on Thursday.
Could we see Jordan Holloway pitching, maybe?
He's not good. He hasn't been good in the minors. As much as I like Holloway, it's been a lost year for him. I'm a little confused why they brought him up, and potentially that could be it, but he's not even stretched out for anything close to starter duty at the moment. He's stretched out for maybe 50 pitches at the absolute most if they were to use him like that. Still wait to see on Thursday. It is my suspicion that they will find a way to get Castano on the roster and that he will do it. But if their bullpen is feeling good enough, as you know, a factor exclusive reporting from Grant about the weather situation, if it's a double header potentially later this series, then you get an extra roster spot. That's when you get a 27th man that you could call up without sending anybody down. So wait to see on that. That's another factor to take into consideration. I know most people do not care about this. It's not very interesting. But we'll find out exactly who pitches the end of the series once we get to the end of the series. The thing to note about the Marlins lineup is that it is all righties except for Blade. So they're trusting Blade to face a lefty. One thing that stood out to me in the minors this year is that he was hitting pretty well against lefties, which was not really the case last year at Double-A. This year, his platoon splits are very mild. That's almost the same production against righties and against lefties. Even like you go look under the hood, and he is seeing the ball pretty well against lefties. That's encouraging to see. He has some history against Lodolo. Also, they did face each other going back to last season when they're both at Double-A. So, as a lot of people are, I am very excited to see Blade continuing to experience everything that he can in the big leagues and try to stand out that particular way. We can't emphasize it enough how frustrating it is that Astudillo is blocking any number of other AAA guys who could be on the roster right now, especially Charles LeBlanc. They made a spot on the 40-man roster for Astudillo. They could have simply brought up LeBlanc instead of Astudillo. I know Kevin was being a bit of a Marlins apologist. He was saying they're on a road trip. Astudillo was on the taxi squad. Let him ride out this road trip. I disagree with that. I think that's wasting precious games and opportunities that LeBlanc could be having. I think tonight, entering a new series, going to a new city, they could have simply DFA'd Astudillo again. They could have said, thank you for 1 or 2 games. See you later. They could have simply gotten rid of him between these series and called up LeBlanc and filled his spot. It's not that complicated, and yet they continue to do this for some reason. We've run out of ways to explain it, and if you just look at the performance, and Astudillo has not been a decent major league hitter since his first 15 minutes of fame back in 2018. He's just not a good major league player, but he's here.
Yeah. Noah, before we move on to predictions, what are you looking forward for this series, and maybe what other pitching matchups are you looking forward to the most?
I really want to see what happens when Pablo faces Hunter Green. That one's interesting to me. In terms of the lineup, again, there's not really. To me, it's screaming lineup that everyone complains about. That's going to end up scoring like 6 or 7 runs just to annoy everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's just because how things have gone. When everyone hates the lineup, that seems to be when they score the most runs. But yeah, listen, I love Nick Fortes DHing. JJ Bleday is hitting 500, which is I am a big fan of small sample sizes. So his slash line of 500, 600, 750 is just beautiful.
MVP numbers right there.
That's quite a bold prediction.
Luke Williams is hitting 267. Don't look now.
Anyway, in terms of Brandon Drury, he is like the shining star of this Reds offense this year. He is one of the more surprising players in all baseball because he's deep into his career. He's struggled for the last several years. And yet this year it's been a revelation for him. He has emerged as a really interesting trade candidate, but not for the Marlins. The Marlins do not want Brandon Drury because he's going to be a pending free agent. They're not going to bring him on for the rest of this year just to be a super deluxe version of Astudillo. That is what he is. He plays a bunch of different infield positions, and he actually does hit and perform pretty well, but he doesn't have – he's just a rental that's going to get a lot of attention from other teams. And I don't know if we've directly acknowledged this, but what makes the Castillo start so interesting is that this is almost certainly going to be his final start as a Red. This is going to be his final audition on the market, where he is considered the most attractive rotation guy that's available on the market right now, even more so than Pablo. He's been terrific this year, and he's been terrific for most of the last half decade. Marlins fans are reminded of it frequently because he pitches not only well overall, but especially when he faces the Marlins again. Most of those outings have been pretty spectacular from him. So this should be his final outing with the Reds, and we'll see exactly where he winds up.
Yeah, and how do you think the Marlins could face up against Castillo and especially Braxton Garrett? This is probably, you mentioned matchups-wise. Again, this is probably not the strongest of lineups. But how's it looking against for Braxton Garrett against Cincinnati and Luis Castillo?
Okay, but just first off, my phone hasn't been working the entire day, so I can't look at my phone. So I've been having to use my iPad to do all my looking up.
Kev, you there?
Having a rough day.
I'm here now.
All right. Talk to me about that matchup between Brax and Luis Castillo. What does Brax have to do to match up with Castillo, which Eli mentioned might be his last start in a Reds uniform?
Yeah, it could be the last start in a Reds uniform. Just as long as Miami hits off Luis Castillo, his value will go down, and we'll see what happens. But for Brax, he just has to attack this lineup how he's done against Pittsburgh twice already. And he's been phenomenal. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's the slider that's been really good for Brax, right? That's the pitch that's just been crazy good. So if he keeps using that, he should be good to go against Cincinnati's red team that I think has been has been on a nice hot streak lately. Beat a couple teams, a couple series they've won, but hopefully Miami could flip that around and take at least 3 out of 4. That would be very nice going into the deadline.
Save that for predictions, Kev. I was going to mention that for you, Eli. What do you think about that take on Isaac, that Brax is currently number 2 on the team?
What are you drinking, bro?
No, the schedule has lined up very well for Braxton as we went through with recent starts against the Nats and the Pirates again. He got the best of everything with the way that the schedule, and he took advantage of it. But I still have more confidence in Pablo moving forward than I do with Brax. And but certainly, I mean, kind of an unequivocal number 3. And that's by any standard, this has been more impressive of a year from Garrett than we could have thought. And it is very exciting because he is still very inexpensive and he's under long-term control. So he's a good guy to still have around. I think he still has minor league options beyond this year. So he could be around a while. Even though, there's a lot of different directions. This is a good problem to have when you have Garrett performing the way that he has with an opportunity that we didn't know he was even going to get here in 2022.
Yeah, and with that, we'll switch to our favorite part of the stream. It is finally prediction time. We will be predicting this 4-game series versus the Reds and the Marlins. 4-game set. You guys know the rules. MVP, who do you have winning the series? As we have our super follower predictions with Riley Fuentes with 4-0, Deji Blade, and Romeo, well known in the spaces. Same thing, a Marlins sweep and JJ Blade.
We're going to get into the habit of doing this for all the series. As of earlier this month, Fish Drive's got approved for the super follow subscription. And if you guys want us to not only be featured on the streams, but we're going to actually grade your performances. We're going to put you on the leaderboard as well. Every single series, as long as you
there goes my spot on the leaderboard.
You're going to be run down.
You're going to knock me off.
So as long as people, if you're subscribed over there, we're going to put out the call for predictions before every single series. And you're going to be included in that along with all of our panelists and whatever special guests we have. But it's the super followers that are going to be on there every single time, as long as you guys want to do so. So it's just $2.99 a month to subscribe to us there. A lot of other features that we are bringing along very soon. We're going to be doing our first super follower only giveaway as well, that super followers only are eligible for. So I'm glad that we're finding what works over there. And we're going to continue to add more and more value for people that trust us and support us over there.
Only the beginning. We might have some Jeopardy, including super followers, a whole bunch of nice stuff, but this is only the beginning. $2.99, like Eli mentioned. I think it's probably the biggest steal in baseball, besides that Sandy Alcantara contract. Kevin, talk to me about your predictions. What do you have?
Very quickly, they just retweeted that Jacob Miller signed for $1.7 million, full slot. So that is, I guess, the breaking news. Jacob Miller.
No, that was already reported.
It was already now.
Jim Callis is a little bit late.
Yeah, he came in with Kim. He had the jersey on.
Yeah. No, we already had the value of that as well. It was it's technically, they did something tricky here where the actual signing number is slightly below slot, and they did this thing where I think they called it a signing contingency bonus, where they give him an extra $2,500 and it doesn't actually count towards their pool number. It's some tricky math that they're doing in order to squeeze in everybody that they possibly can in this draft class.
Yeah. Kevin, what was your prediction you mentioned?
I did not mention a prediction. I want to go to Noah quickly. I need to take a peek.
All right, Noah, your prediction.
You know what? I'll go for it since everyone else seems to be doing it. I'll take the sweep. And I'm riding high off of my perfect prediction from last series. I'm gonna go with Nick Fortes again.
Okay.
Go with Nick Fortes again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Eli.
I see a series split in the Marlins' future.
Of course you do.
They do not have very much offense at this time put together. And certainly in the back half of the series, I'm worried about those pitching matchups going against a very motivated Luis Castillo, trying to get out of town and who knows exactly what they're going to do on Thursday. But I think they have a good chance of taking the first two in this series, and so ultimately splitting it.
And your MVP?
And my MVP, I did not think about this one at all. I will go.
I'm the only one that came prepared.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah,
I will go with a former Cincinnati Red, a long time removed from being in the Reds organization, but Miguel Rojas. Coming back to the organization that originally signed him. I think he could be pretty good in this series.
Kev, you got your prediction ready? MVP, you're good? All right, let's hear it.
Yeah. I want to go. They'll take 3 out of 4. I think they'll lose that last game. I do think they could also lose that Luis Castillo game because it's Luis Castillo. But MVP, I'm gonna go. Oh Lord, this is hard. Joey Wendell. You never go wrong with Joey Wendell as your MVP. He's been one of the hotter hitters on this team. So I'll go Joey Wendell with my MVP pick. I think this is the first time I choose him.
I have Lewis's prediction. For Lewis, he has a series split, and he has MVP Braxton Garrett. So he has Brax and a series split. I don't think I can go a split. I think I'm with Kevin. Marlins take 3 out of 4. They dropped that final game. I think they dropped that Luis Castillo game, and then they take that last one. And that was weird. I'm going to go with JJ Bleday as my MVP. I think JJ's going to come out hot, come out swinging in the Great American Ballpark, hit a home run there, his first career home run. I think he's going to get the bats hot. They have him right there in the heart of the lineup for a reason, and he's my MVP. So I have 3 out of 4, JJ Bleday. Anything anyone wants to talk about? Quick mentions? Anything?
Yeah. Noah, I was zoned out blocking porn bots in our chat while you were making your predictions.
They're relentless.
So I didn't hear whether you had did you have the Marlins sweeping or winning 3 out of 4?
I had them sweeping against my better judgment. And I had Nick Fortes again.
Shout out to the bots.
Although, should I go De La Cruz? He had a clutch home run yesterday and a clutch run.
Please don't. This is a very telling series, by the way, on what this team will do. Although I do believe
every series has been a telling series.
This one's a little bit more.
How many series are telling series? It's literally every single series becomes a telling series with this team.
The Mets one is going to be
hovering around
telling.
500.
It's already been
the next one's even more telling.
No, the tale of the team has already been told. Not just with the performance, but obviously this recent spell of injuries. I don't think we can emphasize enough how much just these last few days really take away any dream of them like potentially rallying for a postseason spot.
I still have dreams. Waiting for them to get crushed. But
for most rational people, I think they take that away. Just because we just don't have firm estimated times of return for any of these newly injured guys either. And it's a combination of ones that you could trust based on their back of the baseball card, whether that's Brian Anderson or Jorge Soler. You would think that there was potentially a lot of production coming from them in the second half, but the ones you could really dream about, like Max Meyer, there's a reason why we were pounding the table to have him called up, because when healthy, he looked like a guy that could have an outstanding rookie year and be one of the like a top end starter. Like he could be right now. It's Braxton Garrett or Pablo as the number 2 in this rotation. Max Meyer, like he was going to be able to win them a lot of games potentially if he was healthy, if he was around. And you just add it all together, and I just don't think there's enough depth in this organization to make up for it. Ultimately, it's all about the wins and losses, and if they do, really, they have to go do a full Noah here, and they do have to win 4 straight and get within like right there of 500. If that happens, then it's a very interesting decision. But I will be
buyers.
They're going to have to prove it to me. I'm not going to put that on the table as a possibility right now. They're going to have to prove it on the field.
Yep.
Yeah. It would that be a big a telling series, as mentioned by Kevin, a very telling series versus the Reds before they come back to the Mets. That does it for everyone here. I want to thank everyone for joining us who's watching on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever. I want to thank Noah, Kevin, Eli. I'm Daniel. This is Fish Traps Live, and always go fish.